I feel mad still that my brother, first of all, that's
That I heard were like all one-sided. But I'm an actor and I was a poet, so I felt like if my story is to be believable, I have to tell the multifaceted.
September 7th, 1996. Las Vegas lit up like a movie set. Shakur cruised down the strip in a sleek black BMW after the Tyson fight, windows down, music blasting, and the crowd buzzing with wild energy. Then, out of nowhere, gunfire ripped through the night. An ambush at a red light that froze the strip in shock. 6 days later, headlines across the country screamed the same thing. He was gone. But what if that wasn't the real story? What if behind the chaos of hospital rooms, flashing cameras, and police press briefings, another story was unfolding in silence? A story buried for decades, now finally crawling back into the light. Fast forward nearly 30 years to July 2023, when federal agents in full tactical gear swarmed the quiet Henderson, Nevada home of Dwayne "Keffy D" Davis. Just before sunrise, armored trucks boxed in the cul-de-sac, waking up the neighborhood with a scene straight out of a war movie. Inside, investigators snatched up hard drives, bullets, and one haunting piece of evidence, a dog-eared Vibe magazine with Shakur's face staring straight back at them. And right there, sitting in the open, Keffy D's tell-all memoir, proof of a Compton Street legend hiding in plain sight. This wasn't just some raid on a washed-up figure. The FBI had now made it clear. The world's most infamous drive-by wasn't just about gang revenge anymore. It wasn't just being treated like another cold case anymore. It was now being treated as a full-blown conspiracy. And for the first time ever, the official story started to crack wide open. That raid in Henderson was just the spark, because days later, hundreds of pages of grand jury transcripts quietly dropped into the world like a bombshell. Buried deep inside those pages was a revelation so wild it lit the internet on fire. Witnesses described seeing a man, bandaged but alive, boarding a private jet to Barbados only hours after the Vegas shooting. And according to that testimony, the man wasn't just anyone. He had Shakur's build, his voice, that energy nobody could mistake. If that was real, then everything the world thought it knew. The hospital vigil, 6 days of cameras flashing, the tearful media circus could have been nothing more than a stage curtain call, and suddenly a confession once laughed off as nonsense didn't sound so crazy anymore.
He said, hey, I just want to be alive. That's real for you.
That's so real. I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person today. Because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I could represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died.
Eerie symmetry. Shakur's mother, Afeni Shakur, once stood in a New York courtroom defending herself, pregnant with him in her womb. A proud Black Panther accused alongside the Panther 21 of plotting to bomb police stations. She beat those charges, walked free, gave birth just weeks later, and went on to raise a son who could rap about crack fiends and black queens in the same breath. So if Michael Nice was telling the truth, was history repeating itself? Panthers once again protecting one of their own, sheltering their most famous son from the government's grip, another Shakur disappearing into exile, another battle against a machine determined to silence him forever. That connection, blurred by smoke and whispers, is exactly what keeps the theory burning hot today. But why would anyone want him gone in the first place? That trail always circles back to Keffy D. In his own words, on camera and in print, he's described Shakur's shooting as nothing more than collateral damage. He claimed it was payback for the brutal beatdown of his nephew, Orlando Anderson, inside the MGM Grand just hours before. That hotel surveillance tape, grainy but unforgettable, showed fists flying and security scrambling as chaos erupted. Keffy D swears the shooting wasn't about music, art, or poetry, it was about vengeance. In his memoir, Keffy D drops a bomb. He says Sean did it and even claims a $1 million bounty was put on both Shakur and Suge Knight. This story flips the script. The beef wasn't just East Coast versus West Coast. It read like Bad Boy versus Death Row, with executives acting like generals and artists sent straight to the front lines. Keffy D's version goes darker. He describes a quiet meeting in LA, a bag of cash on the table, and Diddy's word back in the deal. He even quotes people saying, "Man, I want to get rid of them." Dudes. Those lines sting like evidence and can't be ignored. The timing makes it worse. 1 year before the Vegas shooting, the Source Awards blew up into chaos. Suge mocked Diddy in front of a roaring crowd, taunting artists to come to death row if they wanted to be stars. That public slap landed like a grenade and set the stage for something way nasty. Months later, Shakur Shakur unleashed Hit 'Em Up, a diss so vicious it scorched every bridge left standing. If Keffe D's claims hold even a sliver of truth, that $1 million bounty wasn't born from thin air. It was sparked by humiliation, ego, and one of the most toxic rivalries hip-hop had ever seen. And from there, all roads lead us right back to that 2023 raid.
Was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make a...
Federal agents tearing through a quiet Nevada home, flipping it inside out, snatching hard drives, boxes, even a glossy magazine cover, frozen in time with Shakur's eyes staring defiantly. A memoir from Keffe D laid out in plain sight, while the shadow of Diddy himself now faces a storm of lawsuits, fresh raids, and new investigations that only crank up the intrigue. If Shakur really did slip out of Vegas alive, then who made it happen? Who cashed in? Who stayed silent? And most haunting of all, who still carries the truth? The images from the raid stick in your mind, officers hauling tubs of photos, evidence piled high, that dog-eared vibe cover glaring like a taunt from the past, and it leaves us circling one question that has stalked the culture for nearly 3 decades. If the world was tricked into believing Shakur was gone, who stood to gain from the illusion? Because maybe, just maybe, his exit wasn't the final act of a bloody rap beef at all. Maybe we're staring at something far bigger, something colder than a feud between record labels or a couple of hot-headed egos on a Vegas street. What went down that night in Vegas wasn't just violence, it became a test case for power, money, and a culture that knows how to bury inconvenient bodies and inconvenient truths. Shakur's legacy got polished into myth, but the system that tried to erase him, it keeps twisting itself in knots because the stakes never stop climbing higher. And we saw it again in the summer of 2023. As the FBI wrapped up its raid on Keffe D's home, another storm hit the headlines, agents battering down doors at the mansions of Sean Diddy Combs. The news flashed with words like human trafficking probe, dark rumors of wild parties, hush money, and allegations pulled straight out of an LA noir thriller. Every photo showed the same thing, agents lugging boxes, hard drives, diaries, and trays of luxury watches out the front door. But the timing, impossible to ignore. 2 men, 2 raids, 1 summer, and every trail circling back to that same late-night Vegas crossroads. Was the FBI just piling up cases on a billionaire mogul? Or were they chasing threads they've been quietly pulling for years? The silence from officials is deafening, and it only makes the questions louder. And as Keffe D now sits in county lockup, finally indicted after decades of running free, the official story still tries to frame it as revenge over a casino beatdown at the MGM Grand. But with all the big players suddenly exposed, vulnerable, and under fire, the pieces start shifting into place. And Shakur's shooting looks less like an ending and more like a smokescreen hiding something much darker. A disaster so convenient it sucked up the world's attention while secret deals went down behind closed doors. We're watching an empire crack from the inside, and a retired FBI agent, Phil Carson, puts it cold. As soon as somebody has handcuffs on them, they'll sell out their own mom. Now that's not just a threat, it's a warning. The old school code of silence is gone. If Keffe D starts talking, who's next? Because in the end, it all comes back to the money. Keffe D's never stopped saying his crew never got that alleged $500,000 payout Diddy supposedly promised for the job. No wire, no briefcase, no cash stacks, nothing ever showed up. Meanwhile, the man accused of ordering the hit built a life dripping with flash and power. Yachts, penthouses, endless parties crowded with famous faces. And if you believe the lawsuits piling up, those parties also held young women who should never have been there at all. The whispers around Diddy aren't just whispers anymore, they're accusations. One complaint even calls it a modern-day Epstein operation. And now, the FBI agents aren't just scooping up memorabilia, they're pulling at the threads of an entire hidden network. For the first time, the walls look like they're closing in on the king himself. And while the new scandals pile up like wildfire, the old shadows stretch even longer. You can't even talk about Shakur's so-called vanishing act without running headfirst into the legacy of the Black Panthers, Assata Shakur, and decades of government surveillance. His own mother, Afeni Shakur, gave birth to him after beating federal charges designed to silence an entire movement. His aunt, Assata, now lives in exile in Cuba, still on the FBI's most wanted list, a living reminder of everything the government failed to crush back in the 1970s. And every time rumors surface of Tupac sightings in Havana, grainy photos, locals swearing they've heard a man with his voice, it's that Panther connection that keeps the conspiracy alive. So what was Shakur's disappearance really? Was it rebellion in its purest form, a deal cut with revolutionaries and legends? Or was he just another pawn on a chessboard controlled by bigger players, politicians, moguls, and agents whose fortunes depended on keeping the chaos alive? Because from the very beginning, Shakur's life was already entangled with America's resistance machine. Long before whispers of a secret jet to Cuba, it was Afeni who stood toe-to-toe with the system and walked out victorious. In 1969, the FBI rounded up 21 Panthers, slapping them with a laundry list of bomb plots that could have buried them in prison for centuries. She fought back, represented herself, and walked out free. Afeni was 5 months pregnant, her belly a lightning rod in the middle of the courtroom. She insisted on representing herself, no law degree, no backup team, and she won. Afeni didn't just outwit prosecutors, she survived day by day on a grim Rikers Island diet of boiled eggs and milk, forcing a court order just to get the nutrition she needed to carry her son, Shakur, into this world. He was in my stomach in the worst possible living conditions, she later recalled. But this wasn't just a family hardship, it was a masterclass in survival. Afeni turned visibility into a weapon, outmaneuvering a system built to crush body and mind alike. The Shakur bloodline was forged inside the cracks of one of America's cruelest prisons. Rikers wasn't just a backdrop, it became an incubator for rebellion and defiance. For Afeni, every cell was more than a cage, it was a launching pad for the child inside her. That child would grow up learning that freedom didn't always mean running, it sometimes meant outsmarting the world in plain sight, and Shakur never stopped carrying those echoes. In his 1995 prison interview with Vibe, locked up in Rikers himself, he practically mapped out his own rebirth like he already knew survival was the family's inheritance. Gone was the substance, the excuses, the shadowy circle of hangers-on. The addict in Shakur was dead and buried. He told Kevin Powell as if carving a gravestone for one version of himself while unveiling another. Someone who had studied the art of vanishing, of reinvention, of resistance. The symmetry with his mother's ordeal was chilling. Each Shakur faced impossible odds, and each learned the same lesson: how to weaponize vulnerability, how to transform struggle into myth.
Is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate, and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he has to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a half.
I wasn't never faced, he admitted, as if confessing that survival meant rewriting yourself until the world couldn't pin you down. And the music carried that inheritance in every bar. When Shakur dropped Against All Odds in 1996, the lyrics cut straight into a world addicted to spectacle and deception. I've been shot and I made it. Now you tell me how you fake it. To some, it was just raw bravado. But to those listening deeper, it sounded like a dare, a warning that he'd mastered the same survival codes Afeni once used in court. For Shakur, vanishing in public could be its own rebellion. Resistance wasn't only standing trial. It was outsmarting the system, hijacking the narrative. Afeni's victory wasn't just personal, it became a blueprint. So when people dive into the wildest theories of Shakur's disappearance, talk of a Panther operation or a body switch doesn't sound so far-fetched. The blueprint was already there, in library files on the Panther 21 trial, in yellowed press clippings about Rikers, in radio broadcasts where Afeni's voice rang out like prophecy. For the Shakurs, escape was never cowardice. It was strategy, pure chess, not checkers. If Afeni could out-argue prosecutors and walk free from a 300-year sentence, why couldn't her son slip through the cracks of the world's spotlight at the very peak of his fame? And maybe that's why the whispers never die, because this isn't just about whether Shakur survived a hail of bullets, it's about him carrying on a tradition. Every survival code Rikers taught Afeni, every courtroom tactic she turned into a weapon, every moment she flipped defeat into a kind of moral judo, it all lived on in him. If Shakur really did vanish, it wasn't out of fear of enemies. It was because, like his mother, he believed the system didn't deserve his surrender. And that's what makes the parallels so haunting. Mother and son, both rewriting the rules in real time. Which means Shakur's saga doesn't just sound like conspiracy. It feels like the second act of a play that began decades before. Afeni beat the system and wrote herself back into history, but did Shakur pull off the same play, rewriting the ending of his own story and leaving the world searching for his next hidden move? In the Shakur universe, escape and resistance have always walked hand in hand, and maybe the world is still waiting for the final trick to be revealed. And the deeper we dig, the stranger the echoes become. Diddy's name keeps bubbling up, impossible to ignore. According to Kef D's own police confessions and his tell-all book, the Southside Crips were never supposed to be left holding the bag. The plan, he claims, was crystal clear. Take out Suge Knight, take out Shakur, and collect $1 million payday. But when the smoke cleared, one man was gone, another survived, and the money, it evaporated into thin air. The Crips say they never saw a dime, but somebody did. Somebody with enough power to stall investigations, enough reach to keep names off indictments, and enough clout to bury questions for decades. And while the backdrop was cluttered with lawsuits, secret settlements, NDAS, and a tabloid media obsessed with hyping East Coast versus West Coast drama, the real question of why the investigation kept freezing went untouched. Whenever Diddy gets pressed, he falls back on the same tired script. Pure fiction, completely ridiculous. Maybe once that answer worked. But in 2023, with courtrooms hungry for real answers and powerful names suddenly dragged into the spotlight, those denials are starting to sound a whole lot more brittle. Through all the scandals and conspiracies, the world still can't forget the raw heartbreak. Mike Tyson, Iron Mike himself, choked up remembering the last time he saw Shakur. He was really happy after the fight, then he left. That line, delivered with a heavy paw and a cracked voice, hit like a hammer. The man everyone thought would never stop fighting, never stop living, walked out of Tyson's dressing room for the last time. A week later, the world was in mourning. But behind the headlines, something else was unfolding. Something no one was supposed to see. Now the grand jury transcripts are out in the open. Kef D's mugshot is plastered everywhere. Diddy's legal team is scrambling. The FBI's files are thicker than ever, while the unanswered questions pile up faster than anyone can spin them away. For 27 years, Shakur's exit has been sold as a tragedy, an inevitability, a morality tale about fame, ambition, and violence. But when you line up the evidence and accusations, it doesn't look like fate. It looks like a transaction, a web of debts, secrets, and betrayals dressed up as a headline story. And here's the gut punch. If Shakur really survived, where is he now? Is he watching the circus from Havana, slipping through crowds in plain sight, waiting for the world to finally catch up to the truth? And if he didn't make it, then who's been cashing in on the silence all these years? And how many powerful names still have everything to lose if the whole story blows wide open? Freeze that final image in your mind. Shakur's 1996 mugshot on the left, Kef D's fresh booking photo on the right, two faces locked in time, staring back through decades of lies, power plays, and buried bodies in a story nobody seems ready to solve. So now the question falls to you. What do you believe? Is Shakur alive, sipping coffee in Havana? Or was he buried by the same system that tried to erase his family line? The theories never stop, and neither do the questions. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear your wildest theories. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who's still haunted by this mystery, and subscribe for more, because this story is only getting darker and we're not done digging. This is the kind of drama you can't look away from. And until the truth finally breaks through, keep your eyes wide open and your guard up. See you in the next video.